Hi, good morning. My name's Rich and this is the FMCG podcast. This is the show where we speak to some of the leaders of today, helping the leaders of tomorrow understand what opportunities there are in the industry to develop your professional skill set and grow as a leader. Today we're really excited to have Nick Pugh on the show. Nick is the founder of How Sales Consulting. He is a multi-channel sales expert and has loads of insight and consulting experience in this area. Today we're going to be talking a lot with Nick about how you can leverage the multi-channel for a lot of hidden opportunities that are often untapped, particularly by smaller brands and newer players in the SME sector coming through. Nick, thanks for coming on the show. Just give us a bit about you, tell us a bit about your career history and what gets you excited on the morning about the FMCG industry.
Hi, thanks for having me along today. It's a pleasure. What gets me up in the morning and excited about the FMCG market? It's diversity, really. The whole retail landscape is diverse. We have huge consumer propositions in the market, and it's ever evolving. We're living in times at the moment of real entrepreneurship. So from that perspective, there's a lot of change, and these startups are the kind of guys who really shape the future trends and what we buy and how we consume and how we inform ourselves about what we like. So that's kind of what gets me excited in the morning. But in terms of my background, I actually started out in marketing, funnily enough. I did 4 years with WH Smiths.
So you've moved to the dark side.
Yeah, I'm one of those kind of weird hybrid people who managed to do a little bit of both. But I kind of found my passion in within FMCG circles. It's the people aspect that I love the most. Building relationships, building partnerships. But yeah, I started out with WH Smiths. It was a great learning curve for me. Then subsequently past that, I worked for Nestle, Unilever, and I spent 8 years at AG Bar. It was a phenomenal company. I took a side move out the industry into international supply chain with Kuehne + Nagel. A great company, great learning experience as well. Supply chain fundamentally underpins our market, so I think getting an insight into that really kind of gives you a better all-round skill set. And then more latterly, I set up a consulting business called How Sales Consulting, which was fundamentally geared towards helping SMEs on that journey into retail.
Yeah, smashing. Right, that's a really good summary. And getting an understanding of logistics and supply chain with Brexit coming up and the year we've had with COVID. There's not going to be knowledge that's wasted ever, is it?
No, it's going to be a challenging time. I think those who are in supply chain at the moment will understand that there's a lot of pressure points around the likes of Felix at the moment. And, if you look at the world of online, it's in phenomenal growth through the pandemic. So, that's all added pressure onto our supply chain. It's going to be exciting times. It's going to be stressful times as well. But actually, I think those who have invested early on, I think they'll probably come out as some of the winners. Yeah.
And then just for guys tuning into this podcast and sharing and joining in with us, Nick, the multi-channel, okay, what does this mean? What is it? How would you define it? Because when I speak to a lot of companies, often the multi-channel for them it's like anything that's not malts or food service. They just throw in a box, call it multi-channel. But I mean, it's not that simple, is it? How would you term it, and how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I think you're not alone in that kind of the way it's described to you. I think that happens quite a lot. For instance, if you look at the discount channel, some businesses will class discount inclusive of home stores and multi-price stores, but then other businesses will call them variety discount and value retailers. Historically, where I worked, we called them value retailers. It's pretty much everything outside of malts, export, food service. So your convenience operators, wholesale, value retail, discount, forecourt, high street, everything else, I would say. And I personally think it's a phenomenal place to be. Yeah. It's really, really diverse. If off the top of my head, the symbol fascias and independent stores represent over probably 25,000 stores, over that. So that gives you some real opportunity for scale. But it's high-low, it's EDLP, it's WIGIG, it's net. It's just really diverse. It has quite edge route to markets in some instances. And there's lots of regional aspects. So I think from that perspective, it's always kind of edgy. Probably doesn't get the focus that and kind of the respect it probably deserves in some instances. But for me, I think it's a phenomenal place to be.
Yeah. Some phenomenal entrepreneurs in that sector as well. You look at Euro Garages and what those two lads are now doing with Asda. I mean, don't underestimate it.
No, absolutely not. I think, their roots were in forecourt. And if you just look at how that's globally grown to the point that they've now purchased Asda, and I think this week, off the top of my head, I'm sure there was a tabled offer for Nero coffees. I mean, it just shows that you can have a hugely successful business. There are guys like themselves, like Euro Garages or multi-site operators, who have very, very successful businesses in regional densities. So, to me, why, if you've got a potential regional brand as a startup, these are the kind of guys you can go and get some quick scale.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that was kind of the next question for you is why is multi-channel as share of market growing so fast? And who are some of the most exciting plays that maybe aren't necessarily on people's radars that you think have got some great opportunities for growth for those smaller regional brands that maybe they've not got the money to throw at cash, money and cash to throw at the big grocers?
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, there's going to be cash spend across every channel. For me, shopping habits have changed. I have looked at quite a bit of data as well, and you can see that households are doing more shops. But there has been a kind of a move towards shopping not far away from your own home, obviously due to the pandemic, so people are reducing risk. It's not to say that any shape or form that the grocery malls are underperforming, because they're not. But actually, if you look at the likes of convenience, it was a fundamental pillar of the community throughout the pandemic. Co-op did really well. I think they were plus 30 in terms of up to July. Iceland were about plus 34, and independent trade was up for 59%. So what that suggests to me is that people are going out shopping still, but just in the kind of density of the community. And then you've got value retail and discount, where people are locked into value, and that kind of psychology changed quite a few years ago after the kind of snobbery of being seen in the parent stores and home bargains went away. So it's been really exciting. For me, these guys will completely continue to evolve. If you take, for instance, your parent stores, they're not going anywhere. There was regional densities to them. But people are happy to shop in them now. Even think about the likes of Spar, great shopping environment, great product choice. They offer price mark packs to be competitive. They have fresh offerings. So everyone is moving in the right direction, and hopefully everyone can win.
Yeah. There's a good there's a Euro garage near me it's almost like a mini service station. It's just off Junction 39 on the M1, and the spa there is absolutely brilliant. It's got a Greggs in there as well, and you go in there, and the fresh offering is brilliant. It's better than front of store for most of the grocers, the bigger malt stores nearby. Yeah. So the lunchtime trade day is heaving. You've got a queue to go in, and another kind of link up that I think is really interesting, because you are getting brands that are doing kind of concession opportunities, aren't you? I mean, you've got like the Range in Iceland teaming up. My wife took our two lasses there at the weekend just because they were going bonkers in the house. All right, we'll take them out to the Range. And then while she was there, she popped into Iceland and got a load of frozen fruit for smoothies and breakfast stuff that we do. It was just great, like incremental sales, just capturing that opportunity somebody's in store, and like a really, really fresh proposition as well.
Entrepreneurship, it's people thinking out of the box, it's people doing things differently outside of the norms. And I think, if you talk about Euro Garage, for instance, they have a vape concession in their stores.
Yeah.
Vapes in massive growth. There's a big trade out of tobacco into vape. So what they're doing, they're putting that kind of the need and in front of the consumer, and they're bringing it to them. Those guys doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, absolutely. And just building on that then, Nick, like what are some of the big opportunities here in the multi-channel for new entrants into FMCG?
For me, it's the thing that it's around scale.
Yeah.
I've always kind of there are brands out there doing this. I often scratch my head as if I was to launch a new product and I had the capability to do so. I'd probably want to launch in this area first, because you get quicker access to decision making. As there is some range reviewing in some of the instances with some retailers, but it's nothing like what you would expect with a Co-op or a Tesco, etc. So you get access to the multi-site operators you mentioned, the like the Euro garages. You can start scaling your business up slightly quicker. Probably it's a fraction of the cost as well.
Yeah.
And it also gives you some regionality.
Yeah.
Which, if you've got a product that has some regional element to it, go out and speak to these guys. Go and speak to James Hall about their stores. In the Northwest, if it's talking about Blakemore's at Spa in the Midlands, go and speak to the team there. There's real good opportunities to scale your business quick from my perspective, and I think that's where the opportunities lie, really.
Yeah, speed, scale, point of difference. Yeah. So with that in mind, and I definitely agree with you. I mean, I always go into like my local discounters. I go into Ossett. Say if I go to the post office at the weekend, I'll maybe like take the kids down to the bakeries, a craft bakery. They get them something nice for Saturday lunch. We might be going to the park on the way back. And I'll bob into B&M, or they'll want to go into B&M because they've got some pocket money, and it's the discounter in the town centre. And I always look at the brands that are promoting. I just think there's a massive opportunity here for somebody to capture my attention. I love startups, and I'm not necessarily going in there with a shopping mission in mind, but they're very good at I'll see Grenade promoting stuff, and I always come out with something I didn't intend. Why do startups seem to shun the kind of the impulse opportunities that exist in the multi-channel, particularly the discounters?
Yeah, well, before I answer that, I think what you've done is you walked into the classic variety discounter trap, the offering of everyday brands pillars like Kellogg's and stuff.
Yeah.
You go in, you fully intend on not spending too much money, and you probably came out with plasters, a new storage box, and some earphones. It's kind of, that's how it works, but that's the excitement of that world. You never know what you're going to get. You are going to get the fundamentals in the everydays, but you will get traded up. So the question, why do you think they shun that sector? I think the snobbery is gone that existed. There's definitely a more, in terms of demographic, move from A to C1 type shoppers. That happened some time ago, and I think now, I think customers are demanding to see their products in that arena at a discounted price, or competitive. But I think stepping into this world, inclusive, and we're not just talking about value retail, we're talking about the whole convenience offering, etc. It's actually quite complicated. It's quite a complicated unknown, and there's a hell of a lot of contacts. To get your product to shelf can be quite quick, but you have to have leveraged quite a lot of important relationships, what will be perceived to be further down the chain. So there's an initial investment in time in going and focusing on, say, best way, best one, etc. So that investment in time can sometimes be quite off-putting for people because it's not quickly translating into sales. Whereas, if you invest the time and the money into say a Tesco or an Asda, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be complex, and there's going to be a lot of category needs. But actually, once that decision's made, the execution's really good. My own experience of Co-op, for instance, is one of the best retailers I've ever operated with. But it's all built around range reviews and category arguments and obviously investment models and things like that. When they execute phenomenally well, but there's quite a lead up to that. I think that you can see that investment as just SME, when you potentially go into retail like that, but it can be a little bit kind of clouded if you're going into multi-channel. So I think there's a lot of complexity around it, but it's more understanding and investment in time for me.
That's interesting. Yeah. Or almost it's not so much the lack of interest in the opportunity so much as just getting your head around the complexity. Maybe a bit more education is needed there for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you factor in the wholesaling division then as well, that needs understanding, and then that impacts on things like your margin mix, pricing structures, etc. And it's just a case of investing that time. But like I said, and I say it throughout the podcast, there's real scale there. Scale.
So something that I've noticed, and because I'm pretty obsessed with startups, as you can see by all the little podcast trophies knocking about. Big shout out, by the way, just anyone, go and check out our podcast with Dr. Wills when it comes out. That sauce, oh my days, we've converted the family of Heinz. Unbelievable. Anyway, tangent from me. But I see a lot of new startup brands going down the route of hyper premium, which I think is interesting, and there's always a place for it, isn't there? Especially in gifting. But I often scratch my head and think, I wonder why there seem to be less everyday, everyman brands. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I really like Dr. Will's, is it's a real everyman brand. Who doesn't have a bottle of ketchup in their house? But do you think that some of these, do you think there's a number of startup kind of entrepreneurs who maybe ignore some of the space there for more everyman entrance in brands, and do you think maybe some of it's got to do with, like kind of high production costs? They don't own all their own kind of production capital. I'm just wondering your thoughts, because for me, I'm thinking there's not enough everyman entrance into the marketplace, and also the ones that are everyman and they're probably less premium, they seem to be ignoring this opportunity in the multi-channel inconvenience to scale quickly. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think when we talk premium, there's definitely, there's so many success stories in premium, but we are in a difficult financial time. The premium end of the market will probably still do okay, because the rich are still rich, but that middle ground where most of us sit, people are now kind of probably feeling the pinch in terms of price, and we're looking at probably more discounted options. That's just kind of my philosophy around the basic economics of it. But from a startup perspective, I think there's the piece around brand equity as well. You're starting a business up for the first time, and reality is it's your baby, it's your excitement, it's your pride and joy. And there is the utopia of wanting that product in Tesco, for instance, which I pretty much would want myself. But I think in that initial phase, there's a piece around the brand equity piece of not being potentially seen in these stores, because it kind of can commoditize the brand from day one. For me, that's not necessarily the case now. I think if we were going back a number of years, I'd probably be aligned to that thought process, to be quite honest with you. But now it's very different, because you're putting your everyday brand, everyman brand as you call it, or challenger brand, probably next to Heinz.
Yeah.
Next to. So if it's good enough for these brands, it's good enough for startups. I remember, when I headed up the channel for Value Retail, there was a big education piece that we went through as a business around the brand equity and stuff, and now you see the products in there all the time. So I think from challenger brand and a kind of everyman product perspective, I think you kind of just got to get over it and get the product on shelf. And I'm not too sure about product costs and setup. I think that really kind of comes down to a lot of the relationships you have with your packaging companies, your co-packing, etc. To trim margins and make it sustainable. But again, you can come back to these guys and you can get scale. But I don't think there's as damaging an impact on brand equity by putting it in these stores anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so potentially there's this red herring of brand equity that it's not even that people are conscious of it. It's just a bit of an inbuilt impulse against it. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think I said earlier on, the snobbery's gone from that sector. People are price sensitive at the moment. All the major players in FMCG are in that channel, whether it is short dated stock or whether it's bespoke packing. So I did bespoke pack for the sector and it worked really well. And that alleviated some of the brand equity issues that we had at the time. Now, if I look a number of years on since I've moved on from the company, those products are still in market and more. So the business shift has changed in terms of that equity piece. So, I mean, for me, if it was a start, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer.
Well, that's a really interesting point, Ray, because one of my favourite brands for sort of protein bars is Grenade. The birthday cake flavour is ridiculously tasty, and if I've had a heavy squats session in the gym and I'm feeling good about life, I'll treat myself to one for £2.50 or whatever small mortgage they're charging that day in the gym. But then say if I'm in Ossett, I nip into B&M. You can pick one up on a deal sometimes for £1.50, or there's a link say. But what I've noticed is that they're never offering the key flavours that you'll get in the gym. It's not birthday cake, it's not cookie dough, it's the other stuff, it's Jaffa cake, it's some of the more weird and wonderful ones that maybe they're trialling. And I wonder, are there some tactics you alluded to there that some of the bigger brands or kind of mature startups are using to leverage opportunities in this multi-channel sector that some of the smaller startups could learn from off the bat, straight off the go? Yeah,
so from talking from my personal experience of the channel. So you have a few things at play. You could have old packaging that needs to be filled and sent into there.
Yeah.
It's a good exit route for the business. It could be short dated. So
Yeah.
your favourite birthday cake may not be an everyday product that you'll see in B&M, but you might see it tomorrow, and that could be just short dated product or old packaging. But sometimes tactically, what suppliers will do, or manufacturers, they'll sell the SKUs that are around their top selling SKUs. So it could be, I'm not saying this is Unilever, for instance, but if you think about, say, pot noodles being chicken and mushroom, beef and tomato, and whatever else, sometimes what you'll find in the channel is the kind of challenger products within that overall SKU base will get sold into that sector. So it does, and also it alleviates things like warehouse capacities back home as well. So again, as a consumer, I shop in there myself as well. You never know what you're going to get, and that element of surprise and less ranging versus your typical traditional store, it's what keeps consumers excited.
You've definitely put your finger on it there. It's the lucky dip thing that gets me, and I just love that feeling of coming out with a deal. Driving my wife bananas. Oh, look what I've got in B&M.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens to me, and I know, and I'm walking in there conscientiously knowing it's going to happen to me. So that's it's even worse.
She always says to me, she's like, you're such a typical middle-aged dad. If we're buying a washing machine or whatever, you spend hours and hours researching all the spec on Which or Trustpilot, and then you'll go into B&M and drop 20 quid when you're not intending to. What gives? But it's just what we like, isn't it?
It is. It's not going anywhere.
No, I'm not changing. I'm not changing anytime soon.
You need to put that extra £20 into the finances every week.
But then where's the fun in that? Where's the fun? So what would you say then, just to summarise then, are some of the key advantages for operating in the multi-channel for smaller brands? What if you were kind of consulting with a small, let's say a regional brand in Manchester tomorrow, what would be some of the things you'd say, right, here's some great strats, guys, that you can just get on with and utilise straight off the bat that should kind of deliver some interesting opportunities or kind of ideas for you?
Yeah, no, it's pieces around scalability. Getting your product range in order. If it's just a single SKU or whether it's a whole portfolio, I think there's a real ability to scale quick. If you just look at the discount channel alone, these guys have got 800-900 stores a piece in some instances. So for me, it would be a real get in front of these buyers, get your pricing matrix right, get your margins where you need them to be. Have a real in-depth understanding of your competitive set and what they're doing, because it's quite a fluid range. Like I said earlier, the fundamental products like Heinz tomato sauce is never going to come out of those stores, but everything probably around it does move. So it's really having an understanding of who your competitive set is. That the tomato sauce business may not see themselves as a Heinz direct competitor, but who else is doing what they do and what are they charging? So I think that initial piece around really mapping out what scale what looks like is really important. Because you can get answers on the day, you can get orders tomorrow, and it can be on shelf on day 3. It's kind of that quick.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. And it just one of the things that crops up again and again in the conversations that I have as a recruiter is this kind of notion of leadership. I think FMCG, like you said at the beginning, it's a dynamic industry. It's full of creative types, and people want to be a leader, don't they? We don't all want to be beige and the same. So As a retail consultant, what are some of the sort of leadership qualities that you would look for? Say if you were hiring somebody into a team, or you were looking to partner with somebody on a project, whether that's other side of the table buyer or somebody else in your sales team. Like, what do you think good leadership looks like in your sector?
For me, good leadership is the ability to listen, to understand, and I'm really big on things genuinely in terms of innately in my kind of personality. I'm quite an empathetic person. I think having a human touch, we're all humans at the end of the day. We all have goals, we all have aspirations. So for me, if I was recruiting for a role, I really want to understand what that person's motivations are. Where do they see themselves? And what's that journey look like in terms of kind of how have they invested in themselves? What training have they had? But also outside of that, what are they doing for other people? How do they work in team dynamics? These are real kind of important things for me, and I actually would say over the course of my career, which has been quite, feels quite long, there's definitely been a kind of change in society around that as well.
Yeah.
It's okay. You see podcasts, you see people talk. It's actually okay not to have a good day, and it's not held against you as it may have been in like years gone by. So I think there's this big social understanding around how we, mental health and well-being, and I think they're all really important parts because it helps motivate people to go and want to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's a bit Marmite, isn't he, Gary V? But I have to say, I'm a bit of a fan of his stuff, and I really do like all his content around kindness at the moment. And one of there's an HRD, people director that I work with Yorkshire business, name's Lisa. She's at some instances you can check her out on LinkedIn, and she puts some great content out there from the female lead and other kind of thought pages like that, which is all about actually, yes, sometimes there's negotiation. Sometimes you are sat at the other side of the table with somebody, but you can approach it in a way that has kindness at the centre and wants the best for that other person. You're not always going to get the sale every time. You're not always going to get on with everybody in the team. But I think actually, like you say, focusing on, kind of just leaving some of your own ego at the door and really thinking about other people's worlds and what they're in. It just makes the whole kind of creative leadership process in the industry just more fun and enjoyable for everyone, doesn't it?
Look, there's a piece around, people when you hear it quite often, you should strip the emotion out of business, and that's really for me what that means is lose the ego. If you, I could have a trading meeting with a buyer that I've known for a long time and I actually really have a lot of respect for, and that meeting could be absolutely awful. The only thing that's going to hold you in a bad position personally is your own ego. So if you can strip that out, it does put you in a good stead. But one thing that works well for me and always has done is, beginning of the terms year when we're mapping out what the strategy looks like with the retailers is understanding the buyer's KPIs. How many people, there'll be a lot of people doing this, but there will be a lot of people who are listening to this who maybe don't do it. What are your buyer's KPIs? Yeah. Do you understand them? Do you talk about them? There'll be some really sensitive ones that you don't. But actually, by understanding your buyer's KPIs, who might have a family, who has a stressful job, you're helping him hit fundamentally what is going to probably be a monetary target. So you're slowly moving the dial from transactional to, a partnership, which is then based on trust. That's all personality, and that's the ability to communicate with people and having a strong emotional intelligence.
Yeah, right. That's really insightful. And just thinking about people looking for good mentors. Are there any kind of leaders in the industry who you follow or whose content you look at that you'd recommend people check out?
No, so I thought about this, and in reality, I don't really follow a lot of the kind of black and white kind of archetypal leaders in the industry and stuff. I just think about old managers I've had or old bosses I've had, and then I'll come on to one of them in a moment. But you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a big fan of his. He's really straight talking, which I am as well. But he has an ability to still connect from a kind of empathetic side. He's in marketing, which is a completely is a different side of the world from me and kind of the arch enemy in some instances. But
don't know what you mean.
I find it, even though I was in that world. I find he always delivers his message around building teams and strong teams and team dynamics and what success looks like to a human being, because we all want to achieve more, but actually success can be something more personal, like being a good dad, things like that. And he really brings that kind of link between personal and business to life. But no, I mean, like I said previously, for me, I've been fortunate to have good leaderships. When I was at Nestle, in my early days, I was in a regional role, and a guy named Darren Jones, who I used to work with, was a phenomenal person to work with. He really nurtured people and put them on a great track for the future. But more recently, when I was at Bar, I worked under Steve Smith's stewardship, and the culture that was there was the culture that I expect for the future of my own career. It was based around helping others, like a family environment. We had real provenance in our brands, because Bar is a family business. And the culture was around help, nurturing, and kind of development. So, but all while being very competitive, focusing on the training and development needs of the team, all moving towards a kind of common goal, which, are buzzwords in most companies, but it was actually, a trait that everyone used to agree by. So, he's someone I definitely looked up to, and I still keep in contact to this day and still have lots of mentoring and coaching conversations with him. So, yeah.
Well, that's a really good point you raised. I think it can be easy, can it, just to be looking for insights into leadership from books, podcasts with the big names like Gary Vee, and ignore the fact that actually you've got an absolute goldmine of experience there on the team and the manager that's just kind of faithfully plugging away and looking after your interests. So don't overlook what's just there in your team already.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's there's definitely benefits to what you see outside of your own industry in terms of learning and things. I'm really big on that, but actually, we have that on our doorstep. There's people going to be listening or watching this today, and they're looking at their boss and thinking that person's a real good, someone I can look up to, or a real good mentor. So, in some instances, we don't have to go into the public domain. It's there right next to us.
Yeah. And just to kind of moving on from thinking about leaders and mentors, what about kind of courses or resources? Is there any kind of that you've really benefited from that you would say, right, any account manager that wants to succeed and thrive, they've got to have a look at this. This is a gimme.
Yeah, I think the three of my career that definitely stood out were gap negotiation. I remember going on that course quite a number of years ago now, and it was tough. But it's the standout course that I remember, and I've taught into every aspect of life, really. It teaches you some real good skills around the art of negotiation, but actually what it does, it teaches you a lot about yourself. The ego that we have when a buyer basically phones you at 4:00 and demands something by 5:30 that is just not doable. All these things that we in the commercial world will go through. Great course. Sentinel do a persuasive selling course, which I'm not too sure if many people are probably aware of it, but it's one of the best selling courses I've ever been on. It really does teach you the ability to eradicate death by PowerPoint. I've got friends who are buyers and a family member who's a buyer and an ex-buyer, and one thing that really gets to them is salespeople or commercial guys coming in with just carte blanche presentations after you've probably seen 3 or 4 of them in the day. And this course really does teach you the ability to deliver a real professional presentation, but with reduced slides and in a word format as well, so it's really crisp and professional. And then the last one, insights discovery.
I've seen good.
Yeah, on a couple of other podcasts when you spoke around the colours. I'm really big on that. Keypack, they definitely rolled this out through their team. It was phenomenal. AG Bardu, and I think what this does, it really allows you to understand, the other side of the table, who might be your kind of polar opposite in terms of your personality trait. And it gives you a lot of learning in that sense. And I definitely think as well, it's really good when you're building teams. So yeah, those three I would definitely say. Yeah,
right. No, that's really useful. Yeah, I've done the Colours Insights, and where candidates have got it, I'll always ask about it so I can sort of relay it to clients, because I think it's one of those things you alluded to earlier, didn't you? That good sales people, a good leader has a high emotional intelligence. But like anything, you can have a base of it, can't you? But if you're not working on sharpening it and honing it and getting it into the gym, it just stagnates, doesn't it? And I think that's the thing that the Insights does, is it gives you a tool to constantly work on your emotional intelligence, engage with people better in their own terms.
Yeah. I think it's a really safe tool as well. It's demonstrated and delivered in a way that's not salesy.
Yeah.
It's not it's not role plays, etc. in terms of, running through a commercial situation. It actually brings it right down to a kind of base level. This is who we are as a human being, and this is where you're strong, and actually this is where you need to focus, and you kind of go away with a plan, and you can then really work on that. Like, I have a clear vision and I have a clear indication and vision of the areas I need to work on, and I work on those every day, because the other elements they're natural to me. Yeah. The elements that, if I'm dealing with a trading contact who's the polar opposite to me, I'll really work on that, because I want to develop a relationship with that person that's based on trust, and we move towards partnerships.
Yeah. And you've been doing some thought pieces recently, haven't you, with City website, and I've seen some of the good stuff you've been putting out there on LinkedIn for people to try and help them think through how best to engage with their opposite number in the multi-channel. What are some of the things you're excited about at the moment? How can people find some of your content that you put out there for, you know, just to help people out?
Yeah, so some of the content I run pretty much a lot of it through LinkedIn. I was fortunate enough to be asked to write an article on the world of value retail for Brian Moore and Cam City. So that went live, I think it was yesterday. It's actually on my profile, the link. So, you know, if anyone wants to go and read it, check it out over a coffee. You know, and come, you know, if you've got questions, come back to me. I want it to be thought provoking, you know, and I want it to stimulate conversation. It's that's the best place for people to probably engage with me. There's some insight discovery stuff on there.
Cool.
And I actually also do quite a lot of these times at the moment, they're kind of once in a lifetime, and I know that there's an adage going around of we're all in it together, and some people could argue against that, but what I do believe we're all in is that ability. We have that ability to help each other, and you know, we should be conscientiously helping each other, and I see a lot of goodwill from a lot of people on LinkedIn, and I'm really a big advocate of pushing that forward as well. So, you know, I post some things on there, they're quite vulnerable, and it's just to show people that actually it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We just move on, you know. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to check me out.
Cool. And it's are you on there as Nick Pugh or Nicholas Pugh? I hadn't thought.
Nicholas Pugh.
Nicholas Pugh, right. Pugh. So guys, if you're watching this and you want to have a look at some of Nick's content, check him out on LinkedIn, Nicholas Pugh. Also, if you're watching this and you are a smaller brand, or you know, you're a bigger company, you want some consultancy around driving growth in the multi-channel, get in touch with Nick as well. House Sales Consulting is his business. But Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. That's not really one. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. There you go. Got there in the end. Having you on the show today. Thanks for your time. We'll be putting this out soon for everyone to listen to on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. So we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. Check out the playlist here for more content like this. Click the donuts to subscribe so you never miss an update, and give us a like and a comment so we know what content you'd like to see from us. See you next time.